Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing another program based off a question. So here we go. Alright, so over here you can see another program. At the top as usual is what we're going to do today, then the rules, and last the program. So today we're going to be doing another program based off another question. So this time the question, so here's basically the context. So during the IOI in Tehran last summer, there was like an increased demand for Persian carpets. And especially those whose pattern were basically like a check pattern with L times B squares. A rug's price was usually determined by the number of squares. So like a typical customer wants a rug included like with at least M squares, so like the user decides the minimum squares, and maximum N squares. So like the user decides the maximum squares they want on their carpet. So like if there's several possible mats, so like as many mats as possible, like basically you can have any kind of mat you want. And the customer wants the mat as square as possible, which means that they want it like L minus B as small as possible. So basically the difference between the length and the breadth has to be as small as possible. So basically the program is basically like it reads in the numbers M and N and prints the best choice of B and L in that order. So it has to be the smaller side first and then the bigger side. So basically I'll just run the program so that you get like a bit more context. So here, for example, we have minimum. So minimum, for example, I can put like 1, just for example, and maximum is 2. So then the option for you is like 1 times 1. So it's like as square as possible, and like it basically chose the first option that I found. If you put like a larger range, for example, 30 and 57, then the option for you is 6 times 6. So like you can have like any number, like 34 could like also be an option, but then like 17 times 2, so 17 and 2 have like a much larger difference than 6 times 6. So basically searching through all the numbers, and when it found one with where L minus B is 0, it just picked that one and stopped going through the rest. So basically first I have imported mat. Then here I have defined my own function. So val of BL, so like value of B and L. And then here I put in like the parameter m. So here first I've defined a. So basically here I'm taking the square root of m. So whatever the user entered in m, I'm taking the square root of that. And from the square root I'm taking the integer part of the decimal result I get. After that, for I in range a comma 0 comma minus 1. So basically what this does is that it gives like all my results in a reversed order. And then after that, if m mod I, so here we have I, so if m mod I is equal to 0, so I is basically like, uh, so here whenever I changes the value, so then I have m mod I, and if it's equal to 0, then return I, and the integer like m by I. So basically the division will always be like, division will always be without a float value. So it'll be a full division because it only goes in if m mod I is equal to 0. So then here, now what I'm doing like outside the function, so functions are always like defined at the top of the code. So obviously, so the function is here. Now the actual code. So here, I'm getting the user input for the minimum maximum squares. So the int input min and int input max. Then here I'm initializing L and B before I'm calculating like the difference. So here I have L is equal to M and then B is equal to 1. Because like what's the worst case scenario that could happen? The worst case scenario is, for example, if you have 13. So if M is 13 and N is 13, because that can happen, you can keep like the same value. Then what will happen is that because 13 is like a prime number, so then what you get is 13 and 1, because the only factors of a prime number is 1 and itself. So then that's the worst possible case where you have like such a large difference. So then we're just going to start off with that. So we have L is equal to M and then B is equal to 1. Then here we have like the smallest difference. So here basically I'm like initializing like with a large difference. After that, I'm finding an option like with the smallest difference. So like for a in range m comma n plus 1, n plus 1, so that it gets like the last bit of n. So if n is 8, then if I take away the n plus 1, it's going to be 7. So then I need the n plus 1, so it goes to 8. After that, here I'm defining b and l. So that's the value of BLA. So I'm basically like here in my function, the parameter m. So here I'm putting a in the parameter. Then after that, the current difference. ABS is basically like the absolute value function. So L minus B. After that, like if the current difference is smaller like than the smallest difference, then the smallest difference is equal to the current difference. Because I need to keep the smallest difference as the smaller difference. So if like the current difference is smaller than that, then obviously the current value of this is not the smallest. So then we're gonna equate those two. And then like the smallest value of L is L and the smallest value of B is B. In the end, like after you run it, then here is basically like printing the only option with the smallest difference. So here basically like once it lands like on the number with the smallest difference between those two numbers, so like in case of 13 it's going to be 13 and 1, or like 1 and 13, or like in the case of 30 and 56 it was like 6 times 6 36 and so on. So here we can put in like any number. So if I put in like for example like anything literally, I'm just gonna copy this long number. So if I say that you can only have these, like this is the only number, then here this is the option like for you, and so on. So basically you can enter like any number you want, like any minimum or maximum. Obviously the minimum has to be smaller than the maximum, that's like a given. And then you can put in like any number, and then it'll give you like what your option is.